What was your worst moment in high school? Oh god. It was grade 10. Feeling really cool about not being a freshman anymore. So I was sitting in a math class and I had to fart really bad. So I get the smart idea to hit my desk really hard to cover up the noise, right? Well, I hit the desk too early. Yeah, everyone looked to check why I banged the desk. Then farted. Only liquid sheet came with it as well. Grade 10 pay class, we had to learn how to dance. All boys were paired up with girls. As I'm dancing with my partner I said, "Hey, what's up?" And she replied with "Ugh," and just left the gymnasium. Christ. 10th grade. I was sitting in English class right in front of the bookshelf at the back of the classroom. It was the start of the class and we always did SSR for 15 minutes, silent sustained reading. In a way I was blocking the bookshelf and a very tomboyish rocker named Jane yelled at me to move forward. So I jumped forward instead of scooting forward while sitting. It was a chair desk hybrid, and as soon as I hit the ground, an earthquake happened. Like a real earthquake. Worst timing ever. They never let me live that down. Quite probably missing an AP exam because I got the date wrong. This morning. Duck everything. When I was 17. 7 of my so-called friends, including my recent at the time ex, surrounded me and spent a good 45 minutes telling me how much they hated me. How worthless I was. And how they were only friends with me out of pity. These were people I'd spent years with. And they were my closest friends. I hadn't done anything to anger them, they were just being assholes. We always had fun together and I had literally no warning that this shitstorm was coming. One of them was kind enough to give me a ride home. But none of them spoke to me for the rest of high school. Except to say nasty things to me in the halls. Almost the worst part was that one of them, the one I'd known the longest and was closest with, just stood there and offered no words in my defense. The only good part was that I didn't cry. Which surprised me at the time and still surprises me now. I did end up reconnecting with my ex later. And he apologized profusely for what they had done. He's the only one who made that effort. It certainly made the 10-year reunion awkward. I have some serious self-esteem issues because of that encounter. I hate people sometimes. Asking out my best friend and getting straight up denied. She was in all my classes. I did that as well. Things were 1000 awkward on a scale of 1-10 for the first week. But now we are back to being perfectly normal like it never happened. Me and my first girlfriend at 16 went to the beach one day and made out. And dry humped in the process, getting sand all over our teenage bodies. A buddy of mine told me to come over to his place with her and shower off. I'm thinking, hell yeah, getting clean before our date night. We get there and he informs me that me and the girl can go shower together because his parents aren't home. We nervously go upstairs and start to strip down out of our clothes. This was the absolute first time I had seen a naked girl up and close personal. I was so nervous and with a raging hard on we stepped into the shower. She asked me to wash her off with soap. I lost it right there. And bolted out of the shower leaving my naked GF behind. I quickly clothed and drove home. She was so confused. My last image of the scene was her holding a bottle shampoo with a bewildered look on her face. That's right. Nothing happened. I was so scared at seeing a naked girl for the first time I just quickly left. Nobody has let me live that down that has found out about it. 10th grade, I sharted myself at the urinal next to my friend in the morning. No one else was in the bathroom thankfully. If you ever got to fart when pissing at a urinal, be careful. I threw out my boxes in the trash and went commando that day. Worse was someone found the sheet-filled boxes and threw them in the hall. No, knew they were mine. Asked out my friend whom I was madly in love with and she gave me a pat on the back and said sorry. That really sucked. Also, not my moment. There was a freshman that brought 2 bags of soda to school because the seniors had told him freshman Friday was a party and he needed to bring sodas. Freshman year, I forgot that it was my day to go in front of my class and speak about a hero in my life. I started to talk about my autistic brother and it made me super emotional and I was getting all teary-eyed. The teacher saw what was going on and let me sit down before it got too bad. I guess he just caught me off guard, so I had to think of something quick, and that was too sensitive a subject. But I got an A for the assignment, so that was nice. We had a substitute teacher who was, for lack of a better word, ghetto as shit. And every time she got to my name, "Is Aya on here? Why you'll be lying? Is Aya on here?" You saw the Key and Peele sketch and thought that was hilarious, but that sheet was real life for Aaron's everywhere. Also, that skit happens to be hilarious. Edit. Oh. I should add, I graduated from high school a decade ago. I got way too stoned, and being the stupid kid I was, I went to my class. Teacher immediately sends me to see the principal. As I am waiting to see him, I start feeling really sick. He takes me into his office and right before I sit down I vomit all over his desk. Freshman year I was homeless after leaving my home state in hopes of work for my mom. One day I somehow pissed off this asshole and later in class he punched me a few times. I wanted desperately to toss his fat ass out of the window, but the shelter me and my mom was in had a rule that if we got into legal trouble we'd be kicked out. In my entire shitty life I've never felt as helpless as that day. Senior year, due to bad luck and misplaced trust, I was homeless again. Had to go back to that shitty shelter for a year before we were able to move out. Those two tied for first place. This was around the time that iMessage came out. Me and my GF were trying it out, and as stupid teenagers we decided to send dirty pics. Little did we know her mom and dad's iPhones were synced to the same computer. So they all got each other's iMessage messages. I sent a big dick pic to my GF's parents. I went to some sort of intervention meeting with my mom and a couple of teachers there, discussing my failing grades. I wasn't a perfect student then. Instead of trying to help me, one of them decided to say, "You don't belong in this school at all." This teacher here decided he could run his big mouth instead of helping. I broke down in front of my mom and my teachers. I have never felt humiliated and embarrassed in my life. My English teacher wanted to kick me out because he thought I was a waste of space for people who want to take the advantage and enroll in dual credit courses. Remember, I went to a school that offers dual credit classes for students who want to graduate with a HS diploma along with an associate's degree. TL. Doctor, I was humiliated by a teacher in front of a group of teachers and my mom. I had really bad swamp ass when I was in high school and my school didn't have AC. Got called out for it in between classes and people called me swamp up until graduation. Pretty happy my ass isn't a hose anymore. I got taken to the front of assembly in front of the whole year group and got a round of applause and handshake from the head teacher for something that somebody else did. The worst part was every single one of the 200 people in there knew it wasn't me that should have been congratulated. But everyone was too embarrassed to say anything. I just stood there and smiled while they clapped. But I would have quite happily died. I was embarrassed that I had to walk up in front of 3,000 students to get my perfect attendance award. Felt like a nerd for actually showing up to school every day, and just the thought of being up in front of all those people made cringe. In the small town where I am from, people kill themselves all the time, but this one case really got to me. Me and some friends were walking from the locker room to the football field for practice and saw our buddy sitting with his head in his hands in the parking lot. Two cops were standing over him in silence. As soon as I saw it, I thought Julie is dead. Julie was his older sister. I don't know why I thought this. Specifically Julie and not someone else in his family. Eventually Kevin got into the cop car and drove off. Our coach pulled us all aside and told us that Julie had killed herself and practice was cancelled. I was particularly close to Julie since she was close with my older sister. Less than 2 days earlier I was sitting at a dinner table with her and her family eating spaghetti and she seemed fine. The worst part for me was finding out that Julie's little brother, who was only 9, found her hanging from a tree in their backyard. I can only imagine how ducked he must have been mentally and emotionally. I still feel strange when I think about why I instantly knew Julie had died. I still don't really know what to think about it. when I got accused of winning the class president election from bribery. Apparently one of the other candidates heard my buddy say he'd only vote for me if I gave him a peso, our classroom currency that we turned in 4 grades. I laughed and made some joke that was probably hilarious to a 15-year-old about selling his beans. And didn't think about it again. Fast forward a week. And somehow I had been elected class president. I was super excited. And when I got called to the principal's office I assumed it was because there was a first meeting or something. Instead, the principal, vice principal, and the Spanish teacher are all there ready to grill me for my alleged bribery. Needless to say, I was blindsided. To that point in my life, the worst thing I had done was take the bigger piece of a candy bar I was supposed to share. And suddenly I was facing suspension and public removal from office. Say what you will about politicians, but I learned very quickly that the spotlight isn't always the place to be. I told the principal what really happened, but he didn't believe me. He made me wait in another room while he called my friend in, who told a corroborating story. All told, I was there for almost 4 hours, and by the time they let me go I had missed most of my classes for the day. Also, there was the time I fell asleep in theater practice and peed myself. Sophomore year in my Catholic high school, I finally lose my virginity to a young lady. She was under the impression I had done it before and was good. But I gave her the most disappointing 2 minutes of her life. In my haste to enjoy her woman bits and lose my virginity, I failed to use a condom. So we go about our lives and due to my poor performance, we don't hook up again. A couple weeks later, I catch a cold and stay home from school. In theology class before lecture we would pray and the students can say special intentions for prayers. My best friend, knowing I had sex with this girl and she was in the class, makes a fake special intention for me saying I was at the doctor for treatment of an STD. The girl runs out of the class to the counselor's office and tells the counselor the tale. The counselor calls the principal into her office. They proceed to then call my parents at work and demand an explanation as to why I am knowingly spreading STDs. They demand a meeting with my parents, me, the girl and her parents. Word gets around school as to what happened. And I'm sitting at home watching Maury, completely oblivious to the events unfolding. To us an awkward next couple of weeks trying to explain everything to the school, to my family, to the girl, to everyone actually. TLDR, my idiot friend jokingly told my school I had an STD, and all the wrong people believed him. It was the first time I played cricket. I ran round the wrong side of the stumps and was batted straight in the face by the biggest kid in the year. That was an interesting experience to say the least. I sent a girl a picture of myself in a red Speedo. I was called Speedo, Speedy, or Red for a year or so. The joke died down and looking back on the situation I think it was hilarious. It was the end of the day in the science building, and the class smelled like Dodgit. The teacher was telling everyone to check their shoes and whoever had the Dodgit should go to the bathroom and clean it. The teacher kept repeating this and everyone was looking around trying to figure out who it was. It was about this time that I glanced at my shoe and saw a huge light brown smeared turd. It was awful and horrendous. I was too embarrassed then to get up in front of everyone. The time had passed to make a graceful exit. I sat there for 55 minutes reeking of dog shit and kept my shoe as firmly to the ground as I could. I made everyone smell that shit for the longest 55 minutes of my life. Years ago I bought a cable desk crumbler and took it to my mother's house to see if it worked. It was around noon. No one was home. So I hooked it up to my little sister's TV in her room. Desk crumbler worked. So I decided to jerk off. Right after coming. As I started to clean up, I heard a noise come from within her half-open closet. Yup, my HS freshman sister was hiding in her closet because she thought if I saw that she'd skip school I would tell our mom and get her in trouble. She saw the whole thing. Oh god, why? I was on crutches for a knee injury. At lunch, you couldn't come back into the school until the bell rang. So on cold days people would huddle around waiting for the bell. This one day it was absolutely freezing outside. And everyone is crammed against the door waiting for the bell. Me, being on crutches, having an open hall pass basically, decided it would be hilarious to make a big show about being able to go in early. I said something like enjoy the cold suckers. To much grumbling. I get halfway down a flight of stairs. And my brain decides to take a vacation. I put my foot down on the next step before the crutches and basically pole vaulted down the rest of the steps. Tons of people saw and I didn't live that down for quite a while. I've told this a few times. But getting my then girlfriend pregnant. She ended up having a miscarriage. I couldn't talk to anyone for a few weeks. There was this kid. And borrowed a bunch of my buddy's video games and pretty much refused to bring them back. My friend had been asking for them back for months and the big dig kept saying he would bring them tomorrow. Which eventually led to him losing them. So for some reason, I decided the best way to help my friend out was to take a sheet in the kid's pencil case. I don't know why. But that was my plan. My buddy swiped the pencil case and watched to see what the locker combo was so we could get it back in. So I take the sheet in the pencil case and headed back to the locker. My buddy said he had the combo and was about to open the locker, but he got the wrong numbers. We couldn't get the locker open. So we were just standing in the hall with a pencil case of sheet. So we decided to just put it on top and walk away. So we do exactly that. And about 20 minutes later, we come back and the pencil case is in the middle of the cafeteria floor. With everybody surrounding it. Kids were poking it with pencils. Teachers were trying to find the janitor. I felt so stupid. I was so embarrassed. Some people heard it was me. But there were lots of rumors. So that was nice. TLDR, took a sheet in a kid's pencil case for revenge. It ended up in the middle of my school's cafeteria. I was a really introverted 16-year-old in a giant inner city high school. One day I was walking out of class and decided that I needed something out of my backpack. I somehow got my shirt caught in the strap as I was pulling the bag off of my shoulder. And it exposed my midriff in the process. It caught the attention of a teacher who very loudly told me that I was violating the school dress code. I wasn't, and took me to ICE. After a few minutes of sitting in there with a few other students, I think he realized that what I was wearing was actually fine. He told me to call someone and have them bring me a jacket so that I could go back to class. My father worked out of town and had an irrational temper, so he was out. And my mother lived in a different part of the state. So I called my older brother. When I explained everything and asked for him to bring me something to wear over my t-shirt, he told me that he was meeting some friends for lunch and didn't have time. After I hung up with him, I just lost it and started crying. The teacher told me to get something out of my car to wear. But I didn't have one. In hindsight, I should have just lied. He was so uncomfortable in the end that he just told me to leave. Full stop. This'll probably be buried. But it's definitely my most pathetic moment in high school. At my high school, when the e-books arrived, they would give us an extra hour at the end of the school day to run around getting it signed and signing other people's. Well, I didn't have a lot of friends. And I knew that I would spend the whole time awkwardly walking around solo, looking for my two friends who would be amongst the boisterous groups of happy, laughing girls, all girls school. I knew because that's how I spent junior year yearbook day. I think I managed to find one of my friends. Then sat in my homeroom and read the rest of the time. Alone. So senior year, I couldn't stomach being that one lonely, pathetic weirdo again. So I hid in a bathroom stall. For an hour. I'd like to say I regret not braving the crowds. But really, I just regret not bringing a book into the stall to pass the time. I had a small purse with my phone in it. But this was years back when phones didn't do much besides talk text. So I literally just stood there for an hour. One time during my junior year, I left class to go to the bathroom and get something from the vending machine. And I came back and people were looking at me and laughing. I found out that basically the whole class had been talking about me while I was gone and how I had broken up with my then girlfriend. She'd sucked. Our teacher gave us a speech after what my friend did in grade 9. Okay. So my friend knew he was going to switch schools, so he had this brilliant idea. In the middle of the class, he just got up clapping his hands and singing pen 15. Pen 15. Pen 15. Etc. Got to the board and drew a pen 15 while laughing like an idiot. His face was all red. Then he left class. Still singing. I was so surprised I couldn't even laugh in front of the teacher. The teacher was so pissed because she thought our class found it funny and gave us a 15-minute speech. No one laughed after that. Needless to say, he got expelled, private school, and the teachers never wanted to hear his name again.